If you've been saving Buffalo this long, you're not using them today or this week.
So then where do you go?
A lot of home teams, a lot of big favorites. Obviously, the second biggest favorite on the slate right now is Indy. They're taking on the Jets at home. I think that's a pretty natural spot to go to, although they get Jacksonville at home next week. So they're kind of flip-flopping with Buffalo here. You can put Indy on ice and use them again next week. After that, it's Dallas against Denver, the Rams against the Titans, the Dolphins against Houston. I mean, that's probably the one that you want to go to. Not a lot of future value in Miami, not a lot of future value in Pittsburgh either against the Bears. I think either one of those are fine. But Miami is probably the move, although they do have home against the Jets coming up later. All of these teams either play the Jets or the Jags sometime in the next 8 weeks.
It's pretty incredible that the Jaguars, first team in NFL history to play 35 games in a season, apparently, because every team plays the Jaguars. I've never seen anything like it. But Miami, it's going to feel wildly uncomfortable. I just stated on our strategy show the other day, I think Miami is the worst team in the entire league. I don't think they should be 7-point favorites. I really don't. They are awful. But if you are playing for the long haul, this might be one of only 2 chances to get rid of Miami. You are going to save all that value with Buffalo. You're going to save all that value with Indy. You could go to the Steelers. I think that's totally reasonable, but the Bears are clearly a better team than the Texans, so it's not exactly that much easier.
Pittsburgh also gets Detroit next week, so another perfect opportunity to go that direction. A lot of just garbage teams playing garbage, or good teams playing garbage teams in back-to-back weeks this week. It's like Jacksonville Jets, Jags. I see Detroit popping up in places, Atlanta popping up in places. There's a lot around of just like bad teams.
But I think you really have to start. I mean, your pool is certainly thinned out, and if you are in a small pool, we'll talk a little strategy just for a second here. If you have the ability, try to cross-check who has what left. If you realize that nobody has, say, everyone's gonna have the Dolphins left, but no one has the Bills left, and you do, well, then you can leverage them really nicely, and you know that you're going to be ISO'd on them in a great spot. If everyone's got the Bills left, I would recommend going elsewhere and giving yourself that out, because probably everyone in your pool going that direction. The strategy of Survivor becomes of the utmost importance between now and Thanksgiving, when your pools are really starting to thin out.
I'm pulling it up right now. This is something I should have done before we started, but I got there pretty quickly. Do you have any guesses as to who the most popular plays are so far at Yahoo for their Survivor contest?
For this week?
Yeah.
I would guess the Colts.
The Colts are second at 22%.
I mean, the Bills are the biggest favorite. I just don't know how many people have them left.
28% of people going to the Bills right now. Miami is fourth.
Welcome in. It's the Week 9 edition of the Awesemo Fantasy Football Show, all powered here by Yahoo, myself, Nick, RC's in the house, the three of us with you for the next hour plus to get you ready for the slate before it locks. So tons of start-sit questions, some injury news coming in. It just keeps getting worse for Nick's Miami Dolphins. A lot of things that we'll get to right away. Odell Beckham in the future there, we'll probably squeeze that in. Aaron Rodgers' absence, the mess that is the rotating door that is the San Francisco 49ers. A lot to get to. We'll tell you about the links from Yahoo below. Chris is producing. And gentlemen, good morning to both of you. And it just, I can't help but laugh, RC, because every time we're here, even before you joined us, and now with you with the consecutive streak, it just seems like there's shit news that pours down on the Miami Dolphins. And this week it's Tua with Nick.
Nick, are you okay? This is a safe space, man. Just, are you okay? Let it out, man. Just let it out.
This is tough. I don't even understand why they're allowing him to be the backup. Like, why not just play him? Like, what are you scared about?
Oh, my goodness.
It's not like you're 1-7 or anything, right?
Yeah, not like that.
Well, let's be honest. Were you getting to him at all as far as if you were looking for a quarterback available streaming? This had a high total initially, and there was a belief that with Tyrod Taylor back, there was going to be a back and forth with offenses. Waddle, other people were in play. So now with Jacoby Brissett, and I'll let you put the nickname out that you give him, but now with Brissett in, how much does that drastically, if at all, change everybody else around him?
Yeah, I don't think it's that drastic of a change. Like, if you like Jalen Waddle, then you're probably going to play Jalen Waddle. If you like Mike Gesicki, then you're going to play Mike Gesicki. The biggest issue here is just the fact that I'm not as comfortable playing Brissett as I would be with Tua. I think Tua could have been a top 12 quarterback on the week. Now, it wouldn't have surprised me at all if the Dolphins somehow just get eviscerated by the Houston Texans with Tua under center, but that won't be the case because we won't see Tua today. So I'm fine playing Brissett if you are down tremendous at quarterback. But besides that, there's probably a lot more options that are better available, and I'm still very confident in Jalen Waddle. As with Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker was a guy I was really high on this week, but obviously he ends up not playing because he's just always on the IR, so it is what it is.
Man, I'm down bad too with Nick here on the Tua train. I was trying to stream him in a couple leagues. I know Nick said he had him in a couple of DFS lineups. I was right there with him, and then of course in true Tua fashion, he's got to go get hurt and not really play too much. So that's great. But yeah, no, I think there's plenty of options out there in terms of where you can pivot, as Nick mentioned. I think my favorite one might surprise some people in terms of Jordan Love. I think Kansas City's defense is so bad. Like, I don't think they could stop anybody, to be honest with you. It doesn't matter if it's Jordan Love. Maybe if Nick is out there too, who woke up an hour early because he didn't realize the clocks changed, right? But there's a lot of options out there this week. Teddy Bridgewater, maybe it feels a little dirty, but Jordan Love is probably my favorite if you were on that Tua streaming train.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think Jordan Love is in my top 12, which is just revolving on the screen. I can't see it right now, but I really love Jordan Love this week. The Chiefs defense is so bad, like you said. And if there was ever a position for a guy to just get inserted in his first game and succeed, it would be for the Packers, right? They just have so many good weapons around them. Like, all you got to do is feed Devontae Adams and you'll have at least some success. So don't be surprised if Jordan Love has a huge game. So he would be my pivot as well. My favorite one for sure.
I wonder how readily available he really is, because I feel like if you didn't jump on him on Thursday or Friday, he's probably still available in some leagues without seeing the total rostership in front of me. But I would imagine that you could still get to him in some leagues, especially if you're dealing with other quarterback situations. Like Adam Lean, for example, in the chat, replacement for Murray, Love, there you have it, Daniel Jones, or Tyrod Taylor. All right, so let's look at this, the three of them, and Love, Jones, Tyrod. RC, let's start Nick as well. And I just think you made a great point about Jordan Love, which is it really shouldn't matter much about the quarterback. It's really about the defense in this case going up against it. Now, what about Love when you look at Jones or Tyrod Taylor, who I think meaning me as well, a lot of us are looking for a pretty good performance, at least a repeat performance of what we saw before Taylor got hurt.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, RC, or you want me to go?
No, go ahead, Nick. You're good.
Okay, so I have Daniel Jones at quarterback 11 and Jordan Love at 12. So it's basically a coin flip kind of scenario for me. I would definitely like either of them over Tyrod Taylor. We did see Tyrod Taylor be quite successful, but I honestly think coming off of the injury that I'm not 100% sure that he's going to be as mobile instantly. Maybe he'll be a little bit more nervous to run the ball, or maybe the leg still isn't there. He's a little bit banged up. So I would worry about that. But at the end of the day, I would go with Daniel Jones. There is huge risk with Daniel Jones, but at the same time, you could say the exact same thing about Jordan Love, right? It's his first ever start. There's a chance that he has a down game in his first ever game. We may see him go next week as well because of Aaron Rodgers, but at the end of the day, I would go Daniel Jones, but it is very close. What do you think, RC?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I'd be fine with either Daniel Jones or Jordan Love. I think Daniel Jones is obviously more proven when it comes to just sheer amount of starts and everything. Both matchups are, mouthwatering. If you look at it, you think about the Raiders, one of the worst defenses in terms of the run game. I expect Devontae Booker to do well today, but I also think that with the weapons that they are missing, Kenny Golladay is presumably back. I think Daniel Jones is going to have to feed Devontae Booker through the air as well. So he gets those cheap little check downs and those yards will add up. When it comes to Jordan Love, it wouldn't surprise me if they're playing catch up the whole time. And we love a good game script where the quarterback is just chucking the ball the whole second half. So I don't think you can go wrong with either of them. The interesting part for me is you think about Tyrod being in this discussion at the beginning of the year, and I'm not trying to shit on your Miami Dolphins anymore today than we already have, Nick. But that secondary was supposed to be good, right? And you think about it, you have two of the highest paid corners in the NFL, and they are just bad. And so Tyrod Taylor, I think, could have a field day today with the weapons out there. I totally expect Brandon Cooks to be a top 20 guy, maybe even higher, sneak into the top 10, because Xavier Howard, I would assume that he's going to be on Brandon Cooks, or maybe they flip it Byron Jones. I don't know what Brian Flores is doing, but I feel comfortable with all three of those guys. But I definitely would lean Daniel Jones just because, again, I think that he brings that rushing ability. I don't think Jordan Love does bring as much. He's an athletic guy, but I think Daniel Jones gives you a higher upside, but he also probably comes with the lowest floor as well.
Yeah,
Dave. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that a lot of people call like, oh, this guy's the Walmart version of this. I think that Daniel Jones is Walmart Jameis Winston, because like he does the exact same stuff where he turns the ball over all the time, but he has that exact same upside where I wouldn't be surprised at all if Daniel Jones had a smash matchup this week. You also wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Jones was a disaster in your lineup, and that's just the fun you get with Daniel Jones. So that's kind of just something I wanted to bring up.
No, absolutely, man. I think looking at those specific options, Jones for sure jumps out. We also have a bunch of up and downs in San Francisco. Mitchell playing through injury. We also have George Kittle back, although it's pretty much been broadcast that he's going to be on a snap count. And Deebo Samuel is playing through injury. So everybody who's out there is either playing through something or returning from something. And I saw in the chat, and it's a good way to kind of introduce what's happening in two different scenarios. Hector on the chat, Adrian Peterson or Eli Mitchell. So, Nick, you want to jump in there, and who do you look at as far as those two? And then we could have a broader conversation about what's happening with the Niners really overall.
Yeah, so I think that even with Jeff Wilson Jr. returning, I think he's going to have a spot in this offense. It's like how Kyle Juszczyk has a spot in the 49ers offense where he's going to be seeing some work, and you wouldn't be surprised at all if the 49ers are knocking on the door, they move all the way up the field with Elijah Mitchell, and then magically someone else vultures the touchdown. You shouldn't be surprised about that. But when it comes to Adrian Peterson, he's a guy that I'd rather just let ride the bench this week, especially going up against the LA Rams. I do really believe that he is going to be the main running back on the team, at least on first and second down. I think McNichols will be the third down back. Again, am I 100% certain on that? No, but that's just kind of how I feel the offense is going to play out. But I definitely go with Elijah Mitchell. I think he has top 12 upside every single week. He's been on fire as of recently. So you wouldn't think we'd see all that heavy of a dosage of Jeff Wilson. But then again, you have to assume that Kyle Shanahan is a little bit crazy, and that is possible. But I would definitely go with Mitchell. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that the injury with Mitchell really scares me. I mean, you take one shot and we know he could be out, right? And also, you already mentioned Kyle Shanahan is a lunatic when it comes to running backs. It seems like any week, you know, Kyle Juszczyk could be the lead running back for this team, and I don't think it would surprise anybody, right? I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And you get Jeff Wilson back this week, who, in my opinion, is the best running back in that backfield when everybody's healthy outside of Raheem Mostert. Obviously, he's gone this year. So I'm interested to see what happens there. Being a Titans fan, I think they're just going to give the load to Adrian Peterson from the jump. I really do. Jerry McNichols is not the guy between the tackles. I do agree with you, Nick, in the sense that he'll be the third down back, but I think Adrian Peterson will come in right away and be the first and second down guy. And listen, the Rams defense is good. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. Aaron Donald and now maybe even Von Miller this week. But I think overall, this scheme for the Tennessee Titans isn't going to change much. I don't expect Adrian Peterson to be Derrick Henry because that's just idiotic. If anybody thinks that, you're wrong, right? But I do find it interesting. The last two times that Adrian Peterson has moved to a new team, he's been really good the first week. Like really, really good as soon as he's been implemented into the lineup. So I don't expect him to be, you know, maybe 20 carries and 100 yards per se, but it wouldn't shock me if he gets, you know, 12 to 15 carries for 60 to 70 yards and he finds pay dirt. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all, but I am going to start Elijah Mitchell over him, but I don't think that you necessarily have to keep Adrian Peterson on your bench. I think he's a solid flex option this week.
All right, so go ahead.
I was going to say that's just kind of where me and him differ, obviously, because I'm not as confident 100% in him, whereas you are. But that's okay, obviously. I think there's a lot worse options than Adrian Peterson this week, too.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to basically mention there, Nick, to your point, which is this is more in comparison to the two. So when we start looking at ranking guys overall and you start looking at the opportunity to get to somebody off the waiver wire, still streaming somebody this close to kick, then it's a little different, I think, in the light of it, as opposed to just two guys specifically. Before we get more in the chat, again, reminder here, beyond hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing, those two links below are for you, courtesy of Yahoo. We're going to give you $10 free to mess around with. That's that first link. And then if you're new to Yahoo, you still haven't signed up, that's okay. We're going to give you 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up upon your first contest entry as well. One other thing, actually a couple of other areas that we should look at overall with injury, and this is going to factor back into some start sits as we get closer to this slate locking up in an hour. The situation in Arizona, Kyler Murray first, DeAndre Hopkins second, although it looks pretty, I guess, depending on how you look at Kyler Murray, it looks much closer to DeAndre Hopkins being ruled out right now than it does Kyler Murray. Is that me misreading, you think? Which happens, of course, especially on this show.
Yeah, I think definitely D-Hop's not playing, and I'm pretty sure that Kyler isn't going to play either. They were talking about how he's taking like virtual reps or something. I made a joke that like, oh, is he playing Madden on the sideline or something? Is that what he's practicing? Because how is he doing virtual mental reps? How does that even work? I don't think he's going to play. So my assumption is that it is Colt McCoy, and I don't think that DeAndre Hopkins is going to play either. But definitely DeAndre Hopkins is much closer to out than Kyler Murray is.
Well, let's assume that both are out, right? So then, RC, let's start Nick as well. Let's look at this. And, I don't know if I'm assuming that Christian Kirk is pretty much fully rostered around the league anyway. So if you could get to him some way, then his status bumps up immediately. But Rondale Moore now becomes, I think, super interesting, as well as Adrian Green, right? He's out on the COVID list. So you've got two guys who are out. Christian Kirk, I imagine, I'm just going to assume for the purposes of this conversation, if that's okay with you guys, and I'll start with you, RC, that DeAndre Hopkins is out, Kyler Murray is out, and that you can't get to Christian Kirk. So immediately, Rondale Moore, I think his value bumps up exponentially.
Oh, yeah, he has to. Absolutely. I mean, just to be on the field more, right? You think about it, the two top options in terms of the passing game for the Arizona Cardinals are gone, right? So I think that the guy that's really going to prosper the most from this is Chase Edmonds. I think that James Conner takes a major step back. You think about what he's done so far this year in the sense that he's kind of that goal line guy, right? In between from the red zone type area. That's what James Conner has thrived. I think Chase Edmonds in those checkdowns, right, will be critical today. But if you're looking for a guy on the waiver wire, if Christian Kirk is available, which would be kind of surprising, and let me get a league invite next year so I can be involved and win that one. But no, I think Rondale Moore is the guy that really should be the target out there. But I'm curious to see what Cliff Kingsbury does with him, because I don't think Colt McCoy obviously is not Kyler Murray. I think everybody knows that. Right. I just want to see how they implement Rondale Moore. And I think he could be the guy that prospers the most, just because I think they could be using a lot of tunnel screens, right? Trying to get up the field a little bit, maybe some gadget plays as well. Because when you're losing two of the top offensive playmakers in the NFL, you're going to have to get a little gadgety, regardless of if you're the Arizona Cardinals and you're one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I really do hope that Rondale Moore has a big game. I got him in like all my DFS lineups. So my assumption is that he is the guy over Christian Kirk. Rondale Moore is a very interesting player because he came out the gate so hot and then recently kind of cooled down. But I think if there was ever a game for him to be much more involved, it would be without all the other wide receiver options. So I agree on that. I think Christian Kirk, I'm not as high on him, but I still think he could have a good game as well.
Zach Ertz now bumps up as well, not only because of volume and being on the field, but also it's safe to say that a backup quarterback this quick of a turnaround to be starting is going to look to the middle of the field, is going to look to the tight end. So I think now 2 times over, Zach Ertz's value bumps up, right, Nick?
Yeah, definitely. I think Zach, sorry, I muted myself because I was just typing and I don't want you guys to hear me smashing my keyboard aggressively.
Well, that's all right.
Sure,
that would sending some sort of note in a Dolphins fan group? Or?
Yeah, an angry message into the Dolphins Reddit about Tua. No, in reality, that's not what's happening. I was just typing in players into my lineup. But what I was saying was that...
I would have believed you if it was the case, though. I mean...
No, I used to do that. Not anymore, though.
Well, at least not during a show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, not during the show. Yeah, I can't be that angry during the show. But Zach Ertz, I think, has a lot of upside this week as well. I'm so happy that he is not in Philly anymore, to be honest with you, because it was so annoying with Goddard and Ertz every single week that it just seems so safe to play Ertz every single game. He's one of the most interesting guys. I got a lot of questions today on my stream about like George Kittle versus Ertz, George Kittle versus Schultz, some of those like lower top 10 kind of guys. And we haven't really touched on Kittle too much, unless maybe we did and it just went straight through my brain. I'm not playing Kittle at all this week. So, and I like Zach Ertz a lot this week.
Man, I'm starting Kittle this week.
I mean,
Yeah,
they said
over Ertz.
50% of snaps. How can you do that?
I mean, it's one of those deals where Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, with Debo and everything like that, who else are you going to throw to? I guess Brandon Ayuk. But even with 50% of snaps, I think George Kittle, and just with how bad tight end is, right? You think about it last week and how many offers people got. I think you have to start George Kittle if you have him. Like, do I expect him to be the George Kittle of what we expect, that top 3 tight end pick? No, absolutely not. But I definitely expect him to be in that 8 to 12 range. And if he's in that 8 to 12 range, I mean, he's fantasy gold at this point with how bad tight end is.
Oh, yeah, sure. I expect him to be top 12 as well. But there are some names that I would feel a lot more comfortable playing them because I just feel like they're going to be on the field more. And that's how I feel about Ertz.
No, I mean, being on the field, I mean, that's opportunity is the best thing you can have in fantasy football, no doubt.
It's the balance of it, though, right? Because ultimately, Zach Ertz, ultimately, George Kittle's going to be out there in the same amount of snaps that they would if they were blowing a team out. So let's say Arizona, in some unlikelihood, right, is blowing out San Francisco with Colt McCoy, which, again, is lower probability. I get it. But other tight ends that you're looking around the league as well could be victim to that game script rapidly changing if their teams are up. And then you're kind of equalizing the same amount of volume on the field. And then it's like, all right, who's going to give you the best opportunity to maximize 50, 60% of the snaps? And then you go back to Kittle, right? Because I think that's where you look at the history of it. They're really only throwing to Debo and Kittle anyway.
So. Exactly, yeah.
All right, Roberto here on the Super Chat. We appreciate you, Roberto, big time. Full PPR. And RC, we could swing it back to you here first. McNichols, Javonte Williams, or Montgomery? Full PPR. And again, thank you for the Super Chat.
Man, Montgomery's probably the most interesting player right now in fantasy just because of where he is in terms of scheduling, right? Like if it was a noon game, I'd feel great about firing up David Montgomery, but he's on Monday Night Football. And if you don't have Khalil Herbert, I don't know if you can start Montgomery, right? Like I just don't know because you don't know what kind of snaps he's going to get, right? The other 2 names were Javonte Williams and then McNichols. I mean, I'm probably going to have to start Javonte Williams. I'm going to that well one more time. It's got to be Javonte Williams week, one of these weeks, right? Like it has to be. He has to take over. And I was kind of surprised that they didn't trade Melvin Gordon at the deadline to a team like maybe the Tennessee Titans who went out and got Adrian Peterson. But I'm definitely starting Javonte Williams on that front and don't feel great about it. But I mean, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I would have to agree as well. I think McNichols is an all right option, but Montgomery, I think if he does play and he is the guy, then you should be very comfortable playing Montgomery. Even though this Bears offense is just a dumpster fire, I still think that Montgomery could have value. But I agree with you, Javonte Williams, and don't be surprised at all if Melvin Gordon outscores him. You wouldn't be surprised if Williams outscored Melvin Gordon because all it takes is like 2 extra catches or that touchdown to kind of take one over the other. But I would lean Javonte Williams very heavily in this scenario.
All right. Let's keep it moving here. And again, we'll hit as many start-sits as we can. A couple of earlier ones involving Elijah Mitchell. So covering at least where we stand with that. Ben had one, and let's remove Elijah Mitchell from this because you guys laid out a lot of concerns about his injury and just really playing through that with this team and not really knowing what to expect. Although now with Kyler Murray and the assumption that he's out, I don't know if you look at the fact that San Francisco is probably going to be up more likely than Arizona with Colt McCoy. So that could change things. But let's just put Mitchell off on this. Zach Moss or Khalil Herbert? That's Ben's question for an RB2 with a PPR, full PPR league. Nick, you want to start?
Yeah, you have to go Zach Moss, I think. I don't think there's any way because there's a good chance, in my opinion, that Montgomery plays. And if Montgomery plays, we're not going to see anywhere near as much. I don't know how to talk, apparently, Khalil Herbert. So I think that Zach Moss has a solid matchup this week as well. And I know Zach Moss was a huge disappointment up against the Dolphins. I personally expected that he was going to have like 4 touchdowns. The Dolphins defense is terrible against the run, like literally atrocious. So I expected Moss to have a big game. I think a lot of people will be nervous this week. And then you buy right in, you play Zach Moss. Definitely ahead of Khalil Herbert. I would be very hard pressed to play Khalil Herbert this week based upon what I know about David Montgomery.
Yeah, I think Zach Moss has top 15 potential this week against Jacksonville. I fully expect that to be a blowout. I mean,
agree.
we were talking about a blowout potentially last week with the Dolphins. Dolphins hung tough. Good for them, but I don't expect that to happen with a rookie quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. I expect Zach Moss to get 20 to 25 carries and potentially be in that top 15. And it wouldn't shock me if he somehow slipped into that RB1 territory this week just because of the matchup. So I'm definitely starting Zach Moss.
All right, so let me flip it back here, RC, and take off Moss for a second and just look at Singletary as well. And he's been struggling, only one touchdown all season. But you mentioned the narrative, you mentioned the game flow, and really the matchup here against Jacksonville. They should be up, they should be dominating. Does this open up any just specific weekly matchup value for Singletary, who's just been struggling, and that's probably putting it nicely?
I think more so in DFS than, type where you're playing season long type stuff. But I mean, I wouldn't feel bad about starting Devin Singletary if I was in a pinch, right? Like in a flex spot or anything like that. Right. I think Khalil Herbert is probably right next to him in the sense that, what do you want to bank on more? Do you want to bank on them limiting snaps from David Montgomery, or do you want to bank on the Buffalo Bills blowing out the Jacksonville Jaguars? I'd probably bet on the Jacksonville Jaguars getting destroyed because they're awful. And the Buffalo Bills are number 1 against quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. And then I believe they're 8th against opponents' tight ends. I mean, they're the best defense in football. So I thoroughly expect them to be running the clock out with Singletary and Moss, probably starting maybe even the second quarter. Who knows at this point? It's going to be a drumming down in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to kind of account for the incompetence of Matt Nagy as well in that equation, which makes everything even worse. So I'd probably go with Singletary as well, but I mean, that's just, you're really fighting like the bottom of the barrel right there, trying to figure out what to do, in my opinion.
All right, another super chat here. D on the super chat. We appreciate you big time, given the health of these players. Definitely not necessary, but always appreciated the super chat. And we'll bump you right up. Even these long questions with multiple pathways to an answer. A lot of times people in other shows have gloss over that. Super chat's the way to get in there. And look at this. Given the health of these players, needs 2. A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Higgins, has Mixon and Goddard in the 2 flex spots. Andrews is the tight end. So Mark Andrews, Dallas Goddard there, flex spots taken care of. Joe Mixon at the running back spot, and basically needs 2 between Brown, CeeDee Lamb, and T. Higgins. What do you think?
Man, you got to start AJ Brown. I mean, that's a lock every week. I know that he popped up late on the injury report on Friday, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be too worrisome. Sound like it was more precautionary. It sounds like he might have had Chipotle again, even though he promised everybody he wouldn't eat any more fast food this season. But here we are. I think out of those 3, though, I mean, I'm going to start AJ Brown, but I truly do think it's a toss-up between CeeDee Lamb and T. Higgins. I love the matchup this week for T. Higgins, but I'm probably going to start CeeDee Lamb just because I think, better quarterback play. Also, you're at home. Dak Prescott's going to want to show out after missing last week, so I'm probably going to go CD and AJ in this regard.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I would go CD and AJ as well. I think Higgins is one of the more interesting players this fantasy season because he was a guy that I was super high on because everyone thought that Jamar Chase, I mean, the guy said he couldn't even see the football like 3 days before kickoff. And then the guy's like one of the best receivers in the NFL. I mean, it's not surprising, though, when you look at the talent of Jamar Chase. But with everything said, I would just rather go with Brown and CeeDee Lamb. With Dak Prescott back, wouldn't be surprised if Lamb was the number 1 receiver on the week. And with so little weapons on the Tennessee Titans, like without Derrick Henry, they might really hinge on A.J. Brown, considering Julio Jones is basically just hurt every single game he's playing. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets hurt in warm-ups, like putting on his cleats or something. So I would go ahead and play A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb.
That's all right, let's throwing shade at my team, too.
Yeah, fuck you, all right? No, just kidding.
Yeah, Nick's on a shade spree right now based off how he's feeling about his squad, I'm sure. Look, honestly, if anybody could take advantage of what's happening against my team later on and against the Chargers, I would do the same by all means. There's one thing I did want to hit, and we'll continue on the start sits as well. And reminder, hit that thumbs up button. And look, these 2 links below are for you, where you can claim $10 free. We're giving you everything here, courtesy the Awesemo Fantasy Football Show of Yahoo. Hit that link below. It's going to get you $10 free just to mess with. You want to put it in one contest. You want to sprinkle it throughout. It's up to you, however you want to use it. And if you're brand new still going back and forth, still wavering, still thinking about it, don't worry. We're going to give you 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum free that you can use immediately across the board with any of these Yahoo contests that you choose to jump into. And just click that link right below it, and you're going to get that 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Let's look down in Jacksonville on the other side of it. We talked about it from the Miami standpoint, but as far as, the other element, pardon me, not the Miami standpoint, but we talked about it from the other element of it, the other side of it. But what about with James Robinson out? And if anybody's been stashing Carlos Hyde on the bench for whatever reason, holding on hope that there might be a pathway to use him, is this an opportunity? Now, again, it all depends. Everything here is relevant to how desperate of a situation it may be. But let's just look at it. And RC, let's start. And Nick, you can look at it too, as far as according to your rankings that you have coming into today. But how much opportunity, or at least pathway, do you have now, Carlos Hyde, to getting to, as opposed to A, him being buried under James Robinson, and also B, how desperate of a situation somebody really needs to be in the first place to get to Hyde?
Yeah, I guess if you're in a bad bye week spot. But I think also at the same time, we mentioned a little bit earlier, in fantasy football, opportunity is one of the best things you can have, right? And Carlos Hyde is going to have all of the opportunity in this backfield this week. And also at the same time, I don't think this can be understated. Would it surprise anybody if Urban Meyer is just trying to, flip a middle finger off to everybody and say Carlos Hyde still's got it? Remember, he was at Ohio State with him. So maybe he just trying to prove like, hey, this is the reason we brought him in here. I expect him to get all the touches, but as I mentioned earlier, Buffalo is the #1 team against running backs in the NFL. They are dominant when it comes to stopping the run. I fully expect that to happen today. And Carlos Hyde isn't one of those guys when you think about pass catching running backs, I don't think of Carlos Hyde in the top, 75 running backs in the NFL, maybe 100. I don't know. But in that range in terms of, okay, yeah, he can go between the tackles a little bit. But I think when you look at this is an avoid everybody situation. If you have any Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm trying to find somebody else, regardless of who it is. Carlos Hyde, if you're desperate, maybe in a flex or RB2 spot, and maybe you have a couple running backs on bye, but hold the throw up in your mouth because it is not a good situation.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not a great situation, but I'm still fine playing him. Like if you're in a deeper kind of a league. Last week, he filled in for James Robinson really well. He had 8 targets in that game, 6 receptions, 40 yards, 9 rushes for 32 yards. He had a pretty solid fantasy day. He had 13.20 points in that game. So I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if he had like 10 points. Now, again, you're not expecting him when you play him to score 25 plus points like James Robinson can, but things could be worse. And like you said, Urban Meyer just has some type of love affection for Carlos Hyde. We saw it earlier on in the season when they, for some reason, just didn't fully commit to James Robinson. Now, recently, obviously, they have, but I'm fine playing Carlos Hyde. But I do agree with you. He's not a guy that I'm like, oh, wow, now he's a top 12 running back. Like when Dalvin Cook goes down, you play Alexander Madison, and you're super excited. That's not the case at all for, obviously, Carlos Hyde.
All right, let's look at Trevor Neiman's super chat. Again, T, we appreciate you big time. Has Judy, Diggs, Boston Scott, Devontae Booker, Harris, Mike Williams, Rashad Bateman. Who of those should he start for his PPR league? Well, how many? All right, let's look at this because that's a lot right there. So I want to make sure. All right, so let's do this. Let's split this in half. And we'll do like Solomon, right? We'll split it in half and give half of it to Nick, half of it to RC here to kind of look at. And we'll just assume this is a flex, full PPR. All right. Now, how many of these? 6 guys, 7 guys here. Let's take the first half of it. Nick, why don't you start? Judy, Diggs, Scott, or Booker. And it's in why don't you pick 2 of those?
Okay. So out of those guys, you have to play Diggs, in my opinion. I think Diggs has been a disappointment this season, but he hasn't been a disappointment where it's like you drafted him and now you're like really angry. You're just slightly angry that you drafted him, right? Because he's not playing like he did last year. So I've definitely got to play Diggs, though, in that matchup up against the Jaguars. And then outside of that, I would probably be up in the air. Is Damian Harris a part of my part of the question or no? Is he an RC's part of the question?
I don't know. Honestly, I think I might have further complicated this thing.
Yeah, no, you know what we should do? I think maybe we just give like 2 receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex, maybe.
Okay.
Is that what we should do? Okay.
Yeah. Why don't you start, RC? You can clean up the mess. How about that?
Okay. So I'll do the receivers then. We're going to go with Diggs, And then we're going to go with Mike Williams. Mike Williams has been terrible recently. I don't even think he's eclipsed 3.5 half PPR points in the last 2 games or over 4 points. It's been rough. They haven't been moving him around as much. That was kind of something we saw earlier on the season. He was moving around the field. Now he's kind of just stuck in one spot, which sucks, but he still has a lot of upside. I mean, that offense is really good. You wouldn't be surprised at all if Williams scored 30 points any given week. So I'm still fine starting him here. So we're going to go Diggs and Williams. Try not to overthink Mike Williams. I think a lot of people will, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree on the running back side. Don't overthink this, in my opinion. It's pretty straightforward. I'm definitely starting Harris. And then I think Devontae Booker has a chance to be a top 12 running back this week with that matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'm starting him. Get that, milk that orange or whatever it is. Juice the orange. I don't even know. It's so early and
Milk the
slept in
orange.
too long. I don't even know at this
Milk
point.
the orange.
Exactly. Milk the orange. There you go.
As long as you
No,
can get
yeah.
some juice out of it, you're in good
Yeah,
shape.
there we go. Exactly. Milk the orange. No, but yeah, I'm starting him one last week because it looks like Saquon will be back after the bye. It's a great matchup for Booker. Plug and play him, and then you got Harris there as well. So that's what I'm doing at running back.
Yeah, and then I guess we need to flex too, and I guess you'd play Boston Scott, right? Would you agree with that?
Man, Judy and Scott are interesting because it wouldn't surprise me if Judy is just like a mainstay in the middle of the field for Teddy Bridgewater with no Fant out. But yeah, I'd probably go with Boston Scott, and that's one of those deals too where would it surprise anybody on here if they're in a 3-headed committee in this game and it's the most infuriating thing you see all Sunday?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Gainwell was the guy this week.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know who the guy is.
Nobody does. And that's why I would avoid these guys. And look, here's the thing, too. You didn't draft, if you did, draft Boston Scott. Kenny Gainwell, probably a better example of somebody that you took late rounds if you did. But the guys, Jordan Howard, nobody drafted these guys with the anticipation of them playing a lot throughout the year. If anybody, it was Miles Sanders who's been hurt. So to your point, if it's Judy or Scott, I think it's Judy all day because you at least know what you're getting from a consistency standpoint. Boston Scott could do anything. And for what it's worth, one of the best bets that we have on OddsShopper, like the best return ROI that we have across the board for props, is under 44.5 for Boston Scott. In fact, I think it's right there at the top. So our analytics, everything that we're saying from an individual standpoint, and I think a lot of it is the volatility of it. So if you have an opportunity to go anti Boston Scott, Jordan Howard's a little different because you might get goal line carries, but who knows? And then Gainwell, let me ask both of you guys, what do you even think about Kenny Gainwell? Because when healthy with Miles Sanders, at least Gainwell was an option. But last week against Detroit, he was on mop-up duty. So I don't even know what to expect from him.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable really at all playing any of these guys. The best bet would be Scott because he was the guy last week, but how sold in could you possibly be based upon Nick Sirianni? I mean, the guy's an idiot, let's be honest. So it is what it is. I would play Boston Scott, and then I would rather play Jordan Howard over Kenneth Gainwell. But even that sounds crazy in my opinion.
Yeah, you talked me into it. I'm starting Jerry Judy. I was kind of trying to talk myself into it with the Noah Fant being out. Maybe Teddy Bridgewater won't have a lot of time with that pass rush from the Cowboys. And maybe they take away Cortland Sutton on the outside with Trayvon Diggs. So, yeah, I'm with you. Jerry Judy. Start Jerry Judy. I don't want that headache. If I miss out on Boston Scott, that's a lot different than, benching a Christian McCaffrey of the world, right? Like, we're not talking about that. Like, if Boston Scott has 25 points on my bench, I don't feel awful about that. Like, it's like, okay, well, that kind of sucks. I wish I would have started him. But at the same time, it was not even a coin flip at that point with so many guys. There was 4 or 5 guys you were probably considering in that spot. Go with Jerry Judy, who played in over 70% of the snaps last week in his first week back and probably will get to play in more this week.
If Boston Scott has 25 points this week, next week I'll do this show in full Cowboys gear. Like
He's going to now.
No
hey,
way.
you know what? I need to go change my
down.
DFS lineup, guys. I'm putting Boston Scott everywhere just to make this happen.
I'm insuring you, man. All right, I'll come out and Irving, Aikman, Emmett, whoever you want, Dak, Romo,
Quincy Carter. We want Quincy Carter.
Fair enough, my friend. You have it. You have it. I'll have the pants on and everything just to show you there. All right. Now I'm not going to do the show standing up. Nobody wants that. But at least to prove that I'm not cheating when I say I'm in full Cowboys garb. There's just no Boston Scott.
You got to have the socks too, though.
Fair,
shoes and everything.
I'll get everything I possibly can. It's going to take a week's worth of eBaying and Amazoning, but I'll do it.
There you go.
Sure, because I'm going to have to go back and find it. All right, let's keep it moving here. Anything else as far as Rashad Bateman was brought up? I don't know what you would look at as far as how much you trust him in the first place, where maybe, Nick, you have him ranked coming into this week. But if you guys just overall, instead of looking at Bateman as far as a start sit with somebody specifically, just kind of looking at it, he is expected to play, but he also has been questionable this week with that groin injury.
Yeah, I would tell you that I'm not comfortable really at all playing him. I think that he's a guy with a lot of upside that it wouldn't surprise me if he had a big game, but his floor is also not very high. So he's not a guy that I'm really looking for in most scenarios. I think you would have to be in kind of a deeper league scenario to want to play him. Maybe RC, your opinion, much different than mine, but I'm not a big fan of Bateman this week. But he does have a lot of upside because he is a guy that's going to be relatively involved, you would think.
No, I wholeheartedly agree in the sense that the talent's there, no doubt, but I want to see improvement first, right? That's what I need out of this rookie wide receiver who obviously the Ravens like. They took him in the first round, but those injuries have really dampened a potentially great rookie season with all the hype that was coming out of camp. If y'all remember that, he was really the standout guy for the Ravens in camp, but I got to see it first with Bateman. So I'm sitting him on the bench. It's one of those situations where Nick brought it up earlier, kind of with Adrian Peterson. I'm going to sit him on my bench. Let's see what happens for 1 week. If something great happens, cool. I can move forward and start him and use him as a guy, maybe as a flex or a wide receiver 2 in a pinch. But this week, I'm keeping him on my bench.
All right, this is an interesting one. Now, we did hit hard on Gainwell, but if you look around, Ashley Robinson's out. Who should she grab off the wires? Gore, Gainwell, Singletary, or Freeman? RC, you want to start there?
Oh man, God bless you first and foremost. Yeah, I'd probably go with Singletary. Just again, thinking about the game script potential with Jacksonville and Buffalo. I think that both running backs are going to get a lot of work. I expect Devin Singletary to get some work through the air as well. So I'd probably go with Devin Singletary out of those trio that you mentioned.
Well, actually, there was a fourth one, wasn't there?
Oh,
yeah, Freeman.
Was there a fourth one?
Devonta Freeman.
It's not going to change your opinion. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, Gore.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not going to change my opinion.
Right.
No, it's not.
Yeah, no, I
consciously glossed over Freeman. Which is fine.
I would go with Freeman, I think.
Yeah, right.
I will. There's no one playing Devin Singletary. I'd rather play Devonta Freeman. I mean,
okay.
There should be nobody playing any of these running backs. Let's put that out there. But Dyer's times right now, apparently.
Yeah, no, not Frank Gore, whatever this guy's name, Derek Gore, Frank Gore's great grandson. He's like the biggest trap play maybe ever. Like he has one good game, flash in the pan, and then everyone tries to pick him up, get a little bit too spicy there and play him, get a little cute. I would just play Freeman. I think that the Ravens are going to run the ball a lot. They run the ball every single game. So why not play the guy who's perceived to be the running back one? Now, again, is he the running back one? Probably not, right? But out of that group, I'd rather take the highest upside shot. And to me, that's Freeman.
Isn't that kind of like a similar situation, though, to Philly, right? Like there's a three-headed committee there. Like I just kind of want to steer clear of there, like in the sense that at least in Buffalo, we know who the two running backs are there. Like, do we know what's going to happen? No. But at the same time, like, Devin Singletary and Zach Moss are going to be on the field for at least 40 to 50% of the snaps, most likely. And then with, Freeman, I have no idea what could happen. Are they going to bring Tyson Williams back this week? I don't know.
Maybe.
Like, I just don't know. So at least with the Buffalo situation, I hear you out, Nick, like in the sense that he is the perceived one, but we thought the same thing with Kenneth Gainwell last week. So I don't know. I'm scarred at this point, man. I'm scarred. Just give me the Buffalo running backs for better or worse at this point. Whatever happens, happens.
All right, let's keep it moving here. A bunch of start sits from the jump here that we'll get back to as well. And again, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you take advantage of those links and subscribe here to what we're doing on the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. Amari Cooper or Jalen Waddle, full PPR. Now, this is your squad here with Jacoby Brissett, Nick. On the other hand, Amari Cooper is playing. Both he and CeeDee Lamb are playing through injury. We know Dak Prescott is back, sat out last week through injury. So clearly this changes with Tua being out, and we can put that in the rear view. Now, just looking at the two of these with those circumstances, where are you leaning?
Yeah, I'm going Cooper. I like Freeman, not Freeman. Oh my gosh, his name just flew right back into my brain. I like Waddle a lot. I think that he is going to be peppered with targets in this game, but I don't think Waddle can be like the number one receiver in fantasy football, but I do think that any Cowboys wide receiver could, right? CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper just has so much upside week in and week out. And with Dak Prescott healthy or presumably healthy, I have to go with Amari Cooper. I just couldn't sit him down. I mean, it's one of those very hard things to do is sitting down a star player like Amari Cooper. And for Jalen Waddle without Tua, I don't know. I'd rather just not do it. So I'd go with Amari Cooper. What do you think, RC?
I'm right there with you. I am interested to see how this game goes out, because would it surprise anybody if the Cowboys get out to, a 21-3 lead at any point against Denver? I mean, who's literally thrown in the towel, waving the white flag. I mean, they just traded their franchise player in Von Miller. So I definitely start Cooper as well, but I do think it's interesting in the fact that you look at what Jalen Waddle has done with Jacoby Brissett. Now, the average, depth of target, not ideal, but you're playing in PPR. So every catch you get, there's a point, right? I mean, Jalen Waddle has had multiple games this season with double-digit targets and then receptions as well. Okay, so it's closer than I think I feel comfortable with, but at the same time, like Nick said, you have to start your studs. Amari Cooper is a stud. Any given week, he can be the number one wide receiver in fantasy. Now, could he end up being wide receiver 68 or 69? I had to throw the nice in there for you guys. But yeah, he could. He really could be. But at the same time, you have to start that upside in a matchup that really shouldn't be all that scary against the Denver Broncos in terms of, we thought that secondary was great. It's fallen off quite a bit in recent weeks. So yeah, I'm definitely starting Amari Cooper as well.
All right, let's keep it moving here. And a bunch, actually, just a lot of Elijah Mitchell early on. So hopefully we answered a ton there. And for those who are piling in now, less than a half hour before everything closes down, did talk a lot about Love, and I'm sure he'll come back up as well. There's an earlier one. We spoke about Judy, but how about this? And RC, let's flip it back here. Judy or Scantling as far as what's going on with Green Bay and Love in the backdrop there?
Judy. Yeah, I don't trust MVS as far as Jordan Love can literally throw a lineman. I'm not doing that. I'm done like that. I'm good. Start Jerry Judy. Noah Fant. You talked me into him earlier. I'm not all in on Jerry Judy, but in this situation, we're talking about a rookie, or not a rookie, but a first-time starting quarterback, right? With MVS, a guy where, like Nick said earlier too, Jordan Love is going to hyper-target Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones. That's what's going to happen in this game. No Robert Tonyan either. He's going to throw it to those two guys or hand it off to A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. So I'm definitely starting Jerry Judy just because Teddy Bridgewater loves to dink and dunk. That's how they're using Jerry Judy. Sign me up.
Yeah, I agree. You have to go with Jerry Judy. There is just no way that I'm playing. I mean, any of the other weapons like Randall Cobb, MVS, how are you supposed to even figure out who's going to be getting the ball there, if I'm being honest with you, without Aaron Rodgers? Even with Aaron Rodgers, it was impossible to figure out. So I'd rather just go ahead and go with the safer bet, and that's definitely Judy.
All right, let's look at Landry, Devontae, or Galladay as far as a depressed Pistons fan. And unfortunately for you, I don't think it's getting any brighter anytime soon, but hopefully we can add some light to your fantasy football team and pull you away from your basketball squad here. All right, Nick, let's start with you. Landry, Devontae Smith, or Galladay?
I would go with Landry. I think again, the problem with Landry, though, is that I don't ever think he's going to have that game where it's like, he won me my week by dropping 30 points, but he's by far the safest option. And without Odell, you would expect him to get even more targets. And he was getting targeted heavily even with Odell out there. So to me, it's very heavy towards Jarvis. I think Devontae Smith, this whole Eagles offense just confuses me. So Devontae Smith is not a guy that I'm very excited about.
Devontae Smith hasn't had a touchdown since week 1, right?
No, it's been
It was like first play of the game. He scored a touchdown, right? His first ever catch.
No, he has. It's just been brutal.
Right? Oh, he has another touchdown?
No. I'm saying as far as he has that one touchdown. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I got you. Yeah. No, I'm right there with Nick. I'm starting Landry just for, I think, again, he's the number one guy there. And knowing Baker Mayfield a little bit, would it surprise anybody if he just hyper targets Jarvis Landry to just kind of, show something to Odell like, hey, it wasn't me, it was you in this kind of situation, right? Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. So again, in a PPR league, I'm definitely going Jarvis Landry here. Kenny Galladay is more of a non-PPR, half PPR kind of guy, just a big play potential. And also, it wouldn't surprise me if he leaves in the first quarter again with a hamstring injury. So I want to see him prove it to me for 1 week and then go about his business. But between Smith and then you have Landry, I'm definitely starting Landry in this scenario.
Did you guys see the video from last week for Halloween? Odell showed up in the locker room dressed as Michael Jackson, and he's like dancing, and Baker just gives this disgusting look at the guy, like he just hates him. And it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's like Odell must have genuinely hated, or Baker must have just actually hated Odell, I think.
Yeah, it's not off. Like, we see guys not get along, but it's not often that one of those guys' dad releases video with music on it about how bad the other guy is, right?
12-minute
weird.
montage of not throwing him the ball.
No,
It's kind of ironic though, because like Baker Mayfield's dad kind of did a similar thing at Texas Tech before he transferred to OU. I was covering that team, and like basically Baker Mayfield's dad went in and inserted himself in a situation that he had no business being in.
Really?
So it's kind of just full circle for me in the sense that Baker was going to get offered a scholarship by now Arizona Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury. And Baker's dad was like, no, he's too good for this. You're not guaranteeing him the starting job. And so he kind of leaks some quote unquote information. So I was like, oh, this is kind of funny how full circles come around here. Now it's happening to Baker.
I wonder if there was some low key trolling there, knowing that
maybe
that, right? I mean, that would take some research. But again, you were there, you were covering it. Anybody around in that situation would know.
It's a weird situation. I respect Baker a lot more just because he's tough as hell, right? But I found it very ironic this week when that video came out. I was like, you basically did the same thing, but your daddy did it when you were in college, bro. Like, what's going on here?
Hilarious, man.
Yeah, so it is what it is.
Real quick, I want to stick up, and not in this scenario, because I don't think he wins the battle by any means. But the only problem that I think you have with Devonta Smith is that, and RC, you mentioned it, he's not scoring touchdowns. But outside of last week, which is a total wash, they blew a team out of the water, hell and high water back in Detroit. But if you look at that, he's been targeted. Like, Devonta Smith is part of the offense, heavily targeted, and in some cases will get productivity. And all you really need is that one score there. So I don't think that he's dropped to the bottom by any means. And I think that the inconsistencies are a little over discussed, if that is, or maybe overblown is the better way to put it, because he's getting targeted. Like, I wouldn't give up on him. Yes, he's probably a guy that you would bench this week, but I'm not trading Devonta Smith, nor am I just flat out releasing Devonta Smith. That's, I guess, the point I'm making.
I agree. There's no way you can even trade him at his value right now, right? What value does anyone get from that? And if you cut him, then you're going to feel like an idiot because maybe they start throwing the ball again at a super high clip because Sirianni just can't figure anything out.
They're going to be down at some point, I can tell you that. That's all.
I don't even know if the guy knows how to tie his shoes, so wouldn't be surprised if he went back to just throwing the ball very high.
Yes.
I think he's a Velcro guy.
No, he just tucks them in, probably. Doesn't even
know.
He's a Velcro guy.
There's not even that. There's no Velcro. There's none of that anymore. Come on, you guys are younger than me. You know this. Now, the new thing that's been going on for like the last.
Oh, you talking like where you just press the button and then it just wraps around your foot?
Yeah, it just comes in like
oh,
Back
wow.
to the Future.
Exactly. I mean, I guess he does have the money for it. So there you go.
Yes.
I mean, that's cool.
All right, let's see here. Gold Rush. Pick 2, full PPR. B. Edwards, Jay Wilson, Montgomery, Ayuk, or Rashad Bateman. All right, that's a juicy one there. RC, you want to jump in first? Edwards, Wilson, man. Montgomery, Ayuk, Bateman, pick 2.
Feels really disgusting to say this, but like I might be the only one in this camp, but I think I might start Brandon Ayuk this week.
Gross.
Like, I got a bucket right next to me, Nick. Trust me.
Risky.
It's kind of similar to you watching the Dolphins. You always have to have a bucket next to you when you talk about Brandon Ayuk, you know?
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I think I'd probably start him. And then what were the other names? You said Brian Edwards as well as David Montgomery and who else?
Wilson, Montgomery, Bateman, and yes, Brian Edwards. Brian Edwards should definitely see a bump, but yes.
Yeah, I'm between Montgomery and Edwards. The problem is, again, as we mentioned earlier, what are you going to get with Montgomery this week? And it's on Monday Night Football. It just makes it so much more difficult. Man, if you're a risk taker, you start Montgomery. I think just because, well, it's David Montgomery. If he's healthy and he's playing, you should probably start him. And it looks like he's on track to do that. But if you're not a risk taker, I like Brian Edwards this week, especially with Henry Ruggs gone, that situation. I think Derek Carr is going to try and prove a point again this week, too, against an abysmal Giants secondary. So I think Brian Edwards is probably who I would go with there out of those two. But if you're risky and you feel confident, and maybe some new information comes out before the lineups lock here in 20 minutes, go with David Montgomery.
Yeah, I agree. I'd go Montgomery and Edwards. I just read it says, speaking to the reporters on Saturday, Nagy said that there's a really good chance that Montgomery plays. So my assumption would be that he does play.
But can we trust Matt Nagy?
No, but at the end of the day, I would assume Montgomery's going to be, he's been gone for so long. Like this is like, I think his timetable was anywhere from like week 8 till 11, and we're in like week 9 now. So it's pretty probable that he does go.
Yeah, Nagy's on Sirianni level. You can't trust him. Even when things are working well for him, you can't trust him by any means.
Definitely not.
Question about the quarterbacks. Love or Herbert? Now, on the surface, you would think it's got to be Herbert all day here. But, and maybe this is more of a DFS play than it is if you're looking at the two of these for your season-long squad. But I don't know. I guess bringing it up, is there any pathway to where Love would be a better play in your season-long as opposed to starting Justin Herbert, who, I mean, look, they should be able to move the ball against that Eagles defense. That's what I'll say. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Love outscored Herbert, but I would be. It's one of those start your stud scenario where it's like, if you sit Justin Herbert, then I'd call you pretty crazy, in my opinion. Like Justin Herbert could easily put up one of the best quarterback performances on the week. So I think that sitting him down for a very risky play in Jordan Love, which I think has upside. I think Jordan Love could easily pay off in that scenario. I'd just rather go Herbert. What do you think, RC?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to start Justin Herbert against the Eagles, you're probably not going to start Justin Herbert at all this year, right?
Yeah.
Like at that point. I mean, we're talking about one of the worst defenses outside of Darius Slay in the NFL, right? So you have to start Justin Herbert here. Yes, he's traveling across the country, but he's already proven this year that doesn't really mean much. Remember what he did against the Washington football team earlier in the year. So typically in those situations, I kind of stay clear of guys that are maybe borderline when they're traveling across the country, just because you never know what's going to happen. But when it comes to studs, and that's what Justin Herbert is, you start Justin Herbert in this situation.
All right, so let's keep that going with Herbert, because there was a follow-up question involving Herbert. Joe Burrow, and Rich asks that between the two, Burrow or Herbert. Let me throw a wild card in there and make it which one of the three instead of the two, and add Kirk Cousins into the mix here. So, RC, why don't you start? And if you look at the three quarterbacks, Burrow going up against divisional opponent, Cleveland, that defense. Also in that question now, we still have Herbert going up against this softer Eagles defense. You did mention Slay, though, who's been playing consistent at the very least. And then I'll add Kirk Cousins, who has a couple of guys that he should be able to work against that Baltimore defense, which is not great by any means against the pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm starting Joe Burrow there. Cleveland's one of those deceptive defenses in the sense that they actually give up quite a bit of points to quarterbacks. So the way that, Taylor goes out there and just kind of lets Joe Burrow do his thing with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they have a multitude of weapons. Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon can catch it out of the backfield too. Yeah, Cleveland's defense in their pass rush with Myles Garrett is great, but Joe Burrow has kind of asserted himself and to that territory that we all hoped he would in year number 2, especially after an ACL injury. He's a plug and play guy where I don't even care about the matchup most of the time because of the way that they're going about this offense, which is Joe Burrow can throw outside to the middle. I mean, you got a breakout tight end is Zama as well. I mean, he's got a multitude of weapons, and the Cleveland Browns defense has a lot of playmakers on it, but they don't have as many as it would take to stop Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense. So I'm going Joe Burrow over Justin Herbert in this situation with a distant third, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I would do the opposite. I'd go with Herbert over Burrow, but I do agree that it's a definite oh my gosh, I can't even talk yet again. All right, not Daniel Jones. Kirk Cousins is my quarterback 9. Yeah, I don't know. My brain is all messed up. So at 6, we're going Justin Herbert. 7 is Burrow. And then my quarterback 9 is Kirk Cousins. So I do like Herbert slightly more than Burrow. But again, there's no real argument to have. No need to yell at RC or something. They're one off, in my opinion. So wouldn't be surprised if Burrow.
You're supposed to yell at RC.
I should be yelling at you. Yeah, but Herbert would be my lean. It's the Eagles. Come on. He's going to have a good game. You just have to see it happening.
You would think. Absolutely. Paul Mahoney, we appreciate the super chat. Boy, Dad, we're going to get to you there as well. Thank you both for the money. Ashley as well. Though the message is gone, we still appreciate the gesture of the super chat, all three. Let's look at Paul's full PPR. Talked about Carlos Hyde. How about Hyde with Javonte now, looking at the two? as far as the two different matchups, and both who have been kind of splitting or in the back of their matchups each week. Now Hyde at least gets bumped up. So I don't know if you look at the two similar volatility, RC, but how would you lean, Hyde or Javonte?
Yeah, I just don't want to play anybody against Buffalo when you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. We mentioned it earlier. They're the number one defense against running backs. So I'm going to go Devonta Williams here. The Cowboys defense has been all right against the run. Obviously a lot worse than the Buffalo Bills. And yes, he is in kind of a timeshare type situation when it comes to Devonta Williams and Melvin Gordon. But I think Devonta Williams is more talented. I think he's got a much easier matchup. Yes, he might not get as many touches, maybe 5 to 7 less, but I do think he can do more with them. So I would start Devonta Williams in that situation, because also being in full PPR, it wouldn't surprise me if he has 2 or 3 more catches than Carlos Hyde as well.
Yeah, I agree. You have to go Williams. I'm starting Hyde in. I think he's in 100% of my DFS lineup, so he'll probably be shit just because of that. But I do believe that Hyde's going to have a fine game, but I'm definitely going Javonte Williams. The upside for him is pretty high every week. Obviously, being there with Melvin Gordon does hurt him, but at the end of the day, Javonte Williams is just so much safer than Carlos Hyde. Like you said, the Bills' defense is just so good this year, so it's pretty risky going with Hyde, especially since I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is necessarily going to be fighting back and forth right with the Bills. You would think this might be a murder, O.J. Simpson style, because we talked about him a lot last week.
Oh, yeah, so hopefully the glove fits this time.
Right, exactly. You had to bring it back. Now, who's going to have a better game? Your guy who you're starting in 100% of the leagues that you just completely mushed. You're right. Or my guy who I say, if he has 25 points, I'm going to come here in a full Dallas Cowboys garb. Are you going to go with Hyde or Boston Scott? You need one, or else you go OJ route.
I'm definitely going Boston Scott. I think that there's just a random chance that he does just see the lion's share of carries again, and they are able to keep it close with the Chargers, and maybe he catches a few passes and just somehow gets 25 points, whereas Hyde, that's going to be a real grinding game for him up against the Bills defense. So I just don't think it's as possible. What do you think, RC?
This wasn't even a serious question, but I'm
it's a very serious question, because maybe someone in the chat has that question.
I think actually, more importantly, there needs to be a bet here, like in terms of maybe like a backdrop bet, like in terms of you have to go Cowboys, kind of deal. And then if Nick loses and everything, like he's got to put Jacksonville up there and say, I've always been a secret Jacksonville Jaguars fan.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I can deal with
that. I think it's perfect. I'm just saying. But I would go with Carlos Hyde. I'd go with Carlos Hyde.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because again, there's 3 running backs in Philly. Who's going to get the ball? I don't know. At least I know Carlos Hyde is the main guy.
And here's the thing. The quarterback leads the team in rushing, right? It's not like Trevor Lawrence leads the team in rushing. It's James Robinson, who's now out.
True.
I think that's a huge element of anybody in the back. Like if people are out there wondering what to do with Kenneth Gainwell, or you have this random opportunity where it's so thin, bye-week injury, Jordan Howard is available, or even Boston Scott, who's been bumped up clearly from the depth chart last week. Watching this team last week is the outlier. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the owner sat down with the coach and said, we don't do that here. We don't run the football like that.
And we don't win games.
Exactly.
we got to get those 3 top 10 picks, fellas.
Yes.
What are we doing?
Yes.
What are we doing?
Remember, we were on full display at the end of the last year because they pulled Jalen Hurts in order to sabotage the last game of the season. You telling me that they don't have it in them to sabotage the season? They did it for one game.
Gotta love them.
All right, let's look at the flex PPR question here on the super chat. Peterson, Bateman, Jacoby Myers. First time Jacoby Myers has come up in the conversation. Nick, you want to start here? Peterson, Bateman, or Myers?
Yeah, I would go with Jacoby Myers. I mean, the guy is allergic to scoring touchdowns. He scores, they throw a flag. That shit's illegal. You can't be scoring Jacoby Myers, and it's just tough to see. But at the end of the day, do I want to start Bateman? Do I want to trust Peterson? Like, Peterson's one of those fringe start kind of guys we talked about a little bit earlier. I'd rather go with Jacoby Myers and just hope that he finally scores. So that's my lean there. I'd go with Myers. What do you guys think?
I'm right there with you. I mean, eventually he's got to get into the end zone legally, right? Like, or is it just like one of those situations where we haven't read the fine print of his contract, where every time he finds pay dirt, it's a 15-yard penalty or something? I haven't read the contract. I don't know if y'all have. Regardless, I'm still going to start Jacoby Myers in this situation just because the Panthers are, I mean, I thought their defense was good. They lose J.C. Horn. I mean, Stephon Gilmore's now active last week. Now he's active this week too. Like, But I mean, he's getting hyper targeted. Jacoby Myers is, and I think Nick said it perfectly. Like Adrian Peterson is a guy that is a fringe starter. Would it surprise anybody if he's a top 25 running back? Maybe if he gets a couple touchdowns at the goal line, it wouldn't surprise me, but I'm not banking on that against Aaron Donald and potentially Von Miller and a really, really good Rams defense.
That's the biggest problem. It's the matchup.
Myers feels like the Chiefs, like a couple of years ago when they didn't their receivers not score the whole season or something crazy like that. That's literally
right
exactly
before
what this feels
Mahomes.
like. Yeah, it was like 2014, 2015.
Yep.
Maybe. That's what it feels like with Myers. Every single week, you're like, oh, someone has to score, right? He's got to score. No. It's impossible.
So, real quick, there are two things that I wanted to look at. One on the super chat, and then Joe Kingsley on the regular chat brings up an interesting element about McCaffrey and kind of the sprinkle down effect of everybody around him on Carolina, including Sam Darnold, who is going to start at the very least through the concussion. But Schwebs on the super chat, and we appreciate this big time, Hyde or Gaskin in the full PPR. So again, it always comes back to the Dolphins at some point. It always comes back to fill in the blank or Miami Dolphins player. We haven't talked a ton about Gaskin. Everybody else kind of got referenced and brought up with Jacoby Brissett now in for Tua. Can you get to Hyde here, Nick, as opposed to your guy Gaskin?
I'd play Gaskin probably. And the issue with Gaskin is not like, it's just the fact that they just don't give him the ball enough, or like they see that, oh, look, he that worked, right? We give him the ball, we move the ball, that works. And then the next week they don't do that. It makes no sense. I'm going Gaskin though. Let's just hope that they use him more up against the Texans this week. I just don't love Hyde all that much, even though he's in all my DFS lineups because he's like cheap. I just don't see playing him over Gaskin. What do you guys think?
I'm starting Gaskin as well in that situation, just because we've talked about matchups at length on this show. You're playing arguably the worst team in the NFL. If not on that sideline, it might be on the other sideline in this game. But yeah, I mean, I'm starting Myles Gaskin. Also, you got to remember Devontae Parker, not there. What are you getting from Preston Williams on the outside? This is going to be Mike Gesicki, Jalen Waddle, and Myles Gaskin's going to be sprinkled in. And remember too, Malcolm Brown's on IR, so he's not there as well. Ahmed, yeah, you feel okay. But Gaskin, if there's going to be a game where he's producing at a starter level, at least maybe a flex level, this has to be it, or else I don't know when you're going to start him from here on out.
Yeah, I agree. Ahmed's a great DFS, like long shot if you want to sneak him in here. But this is a Gaskin game by all means. So let's look at this kind of as a big picture, RC. I'm curious, and you can start out and kind of set the stage for what you're looking at with McCaffrey back, because it's twofold, right? If you've been waiting for Christian McCaffrey to come back all year, finally you get that. That's no argument. He's playing. You've been waiting for him. Unless maybe you wouldn't for whatever reason. But assuming that you are rolling with him, what about everybody else? Sam Darnold. DJ Moore seems like he's going to be bulletproof to no matter who's out there. So he may be on that McCaffrey side, which is, hey, if you have more, you're playing him. But if it's Darnold, if it's Hubbard, if it's Anderson, if it's anybody else outside of the obvious two, which is McCaffrey and then to a lesser extent Moore, what happens now that McCaffrey's back, especially because we don't expect him to play 100% of the snaps on offense?
Yeah, I think the interesting guy you named there is Robbie Anderson, right? He's getting targeted this year. It just seems like maybe he's got butterfingers or something. I mean, he just can't hold on to the football at all this year. But I think when it comes down to it, I think the perfect example of what this offense is going to look like, regardless of the snap count by Christian McCaffrey, just go back to week 1 and 2, and then you can sprinkle in some Chuba Hubbard in there. That's what this offense is going to look like. Now, are they going to produce at the same level? Maybe not. Sam Darnold he had a safety blanket in Christian McCaffrey. That's what it came down to. And I wholeheartedly agree. DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey are bulletproof. I'm just curious to see with that snap count, is Robbie Anderson the beneficiary? Because at this point, when are you going to start Robbie Anderson? Because he's really done nothing for your fantasy team this year. And on the Christian McCaffrey front, I might be looking to trade him too in season long. That's just me. I actually did that this morning. We talked about it a little bit before I got on air. So I traded McCaffrey because I am in a situation where I did wait out all year, and I am in a 3-5 situation, and I need somebody to replace him, and I need to avoid that late buy. So maybe do that on your end. But in terms of just going out there and playing him, you're going to start Christian McCaffrey. You're going to start DJ Moore. I'm interested to see what Robbie Anderson does, just because he's had targets this year. But what the hell is Sam Darnold going to do now with Christian McCaffrey back? Are they going to change it up? Maybe where it's 70-30 with Chuba and Christian McCaffrey.
Nick, real quick, before you jump in, I'm just curious. Remind us, but also tell everybody, who did you trade McCaffrey for? Because you got a nice little haul. So I think that there
it
are
was
people
nice.
that are probably thinking the same thing out there, like, hey, should I trade him? And if so, this would be a pretty good baseline or maybe expectation for what you could get back.
Yeah, and I was approached by this because, I was trying to stream a certain quarterback in Miami that can't play because he's made of glass. I think Nick knows who it is. But I got approached this morning, Christian McCaffrey, Booker, who is obviously Saquon's backup, and then also just Jacoby Brissett or Jordan Love. I picked up Jordan Love. That's who they chose. And I got Alvin Kamara, Jerry Judy, and then Joe Burrow. And I think that's realistic. Like, I think you could get another starter that's a higher level than Jerry Judy. But at the same time, I got a QB1, in my opinion, and a top 5 running back for Christian McCaffrey and 2 guys I was probably going to drop here in the next week.
Yeah, that's a great move. I think that Christian McCaffrey literally could be in a wheelchair and I'd still play the guy. That's how comfortable I am playing him. The team shows zero empathy. Holy shit, I can't talk yet again. For the guy. Like, they're like, oh, he got hurt playing 90% of the snaps. Maybe we should not give him 90% of the snaps. No, full on. He's going out there every single week. He's going to touch the ball a million times. If you sit Christian McCaffrey, then I don't know what to say about you. To be honest, that's crazy in my opinion. When you're talking about Robbie Anderson, it's so funny because he is targeted so heavily, like you were saying, but just does absolutely nothing with it. And a lot of that blame is on Sam Darnold. You'd be surprised that going from the Jets to the Panthers, these guys played together for years and somehow that connection is completely gone. I think Robbie Anderson's a good player, but at this point in the season, I don't even think in a lot of leagues he's rostered. To be honest.
Yeah,
I would think people would cut him.
Yeah, I think so. To the point in
you
which
pick up Van Jefferson for him, right? You drop
100%.
You drop Robbie Anderson for Van Jefferson.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially
I think that's a name that's available in a lot of leagues. So there you go.
Which I'm surprised by because I would think that not that Deshaun was vulturing necessarily, but just the idea of having 2 guys in that similar spot, but it would bump up Jefferson, I would think, a bunch. And if you needed somebody in a deeper league, he would be there. We're winding down here. A couple more we're going to squeeze in. A.J. Dillon is an interesting name to look at. Eric Wood with the question on the chat. Nick, let's start here with you. Jordan Howard, Derek Gore, Brandon Bolden, or A.J. Dillon. I'm going to stretch it because I think A.J. Dillon is the obvious answer here. But let's have you pick 2. All right, let's squeeze this and make both of you think a little bit more and not just pick the obvious one and move on. You need 2 here. So safe to assume that A.J. Dillon is locked into one of these spots?
Yeah, pretty safe to assume that. I mean, even with Jordan Love under center, we've seen a decent amount of A.J. Dillon. I'm not 100% confident starting Dillon every week, but out of that options, you definitely have to. And then I think I would go with Brandon Bolden off the upside that maybe he catches 6 or 7 balls in any given game. Damian Harris, while is much more involved in the passing game this year when compared to the prior seasons, he's still not a guy that's going to be catching 6-7 passes a game. So I think Bolden would be the other option there. Frank Gore's grandson, there's just no way I could talk myself into starting him. So what do you think at RC?
No, I'm right there with you, especially in PPR. Bolden is one of those guys that literally Damon Harris just can't catch the football out of the backfield, or they're just not allowing him to. Like, I don't know if that's in his contract either. At least Brandon Bolden can come in there and give you the potential to have 5, 6, maybe even 7 catches will go along with those targets that he can get, because with the rookie quarterback, you love a tight end and you love a pass catching running back. So I would definitely agree with Nick in terms of I am starting A.J. Dillon just because he's the obvious one there. And then I think Brandon Bolden is the next best option.
Let's look at this Irv Gotti here. And I'm assuming it's not the real Irv Gotti, but if it is, we appreciate you just the same. Kadarius Toney or Edwards at the flex spot. RC, why don't you take a crack at this? Full PPR, 2 guys who have interesting value with injury or just reality knocking people above them off the depth chart.
I'm going Kadarius Toney. I think Kadarius Toney has the upside to be a top 24 wide receiver, maybe even a little higher. I mean, he makes one move and he's got 4.3 speed and could be in the end zone easily. So he's getting hyper targeted out there just mostly because there's not a lot of better options. You think about it, Kenny Golladay is back this week for the Giants, but Sterling Shepard's gone, as well as other weapons on the outside for them. So I'm starting Kadarius Toney in that matchup.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Kadarius Toney is one of those guys that he's it sucks because it seems like every time he starts to do really good, he just gets hurt instantly. But at the end of the day, I think the upside there is immense. Kadarius Toney's a guy that could easily be a top 10 wide receiver. Like you said, Kenny Golladay, who really cares? I mean, Shepard is still a guy there too, to note. But at the end of the day, I think Toney is the number one option there for Daniel Jones. And I think that we could see a big game out of Toney this week. So he would definitely be my lean very heavily too, over the other option.
All right, we want to thank everybody for hanging with us on your way out. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, please, and subscribe to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. Also, those 2 links below are for you. The $10 free just to mess around with. And if you're still new to Yahoo, you haven't signed up yet, we keep telling you, don't worry, we have you covered. You can get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum absolutely free upon your first sign up and contest entry. It's easy, and then you can use all of our metrics combined with what you're hearing, like today from Nick and RC, and win some money on Yahoo. All right, we'll be back next week at RCMB323, at Notorious FNTSY, at Shander Show for me. Thanks to Chris as well. Thanks to you all out there. Have a great day. For Nick, for RC, have a great weekend too.